Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Raad Life. Today, I have a special guest with me, a fellow San Clementian who is right in the middle of that crossroads between science and virtual online services that have been accelerated by COVID. In this particular case, it is medicine. And as everybody knows, telehealth right now is very big, with a lot of practices basically going online. Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Rod. Nice to be here.
It's nice to have you. I was just saying, you are right there at that crossroad that's going on right now between online provided services and things that traditionally may not have been delivered that way. In your case, in the field of medicine. And I was just sharing that my recent experience with my father and my mom before she passed away, accelerated by COVID. Not that I think we weren't on that path to begin with as a society, where a lot of this stuff was kind of going that way, but there was no sort of accelerated motivation or reason to basically veer away from the traditional way that services were provided. And here we are now, where you cannot do the traditional ways. You cannot go schedule yourself an appointment with the doctor. So a lot of telehealth was starting to happen. And I don't know that once you cross that bridge that you ever go back completely to what it was before. And I think, so with that being said, tell us about your company. I said you're a fellow San Clementian, so I'm very proud with the hometown team today.
Yes.
But tell them about yourself, because this is not what you were in before. This is something you kind of took on 5 years ago, right?
This is totally new. And this is all about augmented. So you have virtual reality and augmented reality, which a lot of people still don't know the difference. Virtual reality is like when you have a headset on and everything is a digital world. You're living inside a game or a virtual shopping center, which you and I were talking about.
Yeah.
And then you have augmented reality, which is when you take something that's digital, created through computer animation, and you superimpose that on the real world. So it's a combination of the two. So for a whole host of reasons, we decided about 4 or 5 years ago that it would be great if women who were looking at plastic surgery, specifically breast augmentation, could see a rendering, a virtual image of their breast superimposed on their real body. And they could look into a virtual mirror. People have seen these things with wardrobes and eyeglasses. If a woman can look into a mirror, see her breast superimposed back on her, and then the doctor could change the shape and size of what she sees in real time to augment a verbal conversation. So what I like to say is we're transforming a verbal discussion into a visual experience.
Well, and Ethan,
that comprehension, Rod, it's noted visual modality of communication is about 8 times more effective.
Well, sure. I mean, I was just going to say that, just to kind of lay some background for people that are listening to this, is that up till that point, right now, what it is you are shown before and after photos. Yeah. It's other people, and what you're saying is that personal connect between what it would be for me, and again, this is, there's a whole bunch of reasons for basically breast augmentation or plastic surgery, where it's, it could be cancer, it could be, a mommy makeover, it could be a whole bunch of reasons that are motivating this. But with that being said, it's a very personal decision. And the patient is being asked to basically make a decision based on what the effect was maybe for somebody else. So what you're doing is saying, let's give you as close as possible prior to procedure a reference point of what your expectations can be.
Yeah, absolutely true. And you're right. I mean, I should have prefaced it. Plastic surgery it's global. There are all kinds of reasons behind it. But at the end of the day, you have men and women making a decision to have an invasive procedure done that's going to be relatively permanent. This is a big deal, right? And it's expensive.
Right, and it's expensive.
And so not only where are your reference points, right? Just exactly what you said, Rod. What are your reference points to, here I am today, and here's what I'm hoping I'm going to look like. So not only are you relying on pictures or drawings or somehow trying to convey an image between you and your surgeon, but at the end of the day, unless you have an image of what that projected outcome is, what you have is 2 different images. You have the surgeon's image, what they think they can do, and the patient's expectation of what he or she thinks she's going to get. Those are 2 very different things.
I'll share this with you. In my field of interior design, right? I could show pictures of finished product from other projects all day long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, not only, I mean, just not to make this thing a money decision, but not only can so I should say, I can get them to spend money faster if I give them a visualization relevant to their own space.
Yes.
If I can give them a visualization relevant to their own space that can then be modified in front of them based on input that they are giving me, that is not only now a customized solution that is as an individual as they are, but it is also a collaborative process that just got established. And so the purposes of the image and the picture is worth 1,000 words is actually absolutely true, but it also leaves a little bit less room for misinterpretation, missed expectations, and it's funny because the remarks I usually get on my stuff is, "Wow, it's exactly like the rendering you showed me." So I can totally understand.
Right.
And I'm actually very astounded that in something as expensive, as personal, as intrusive as a procedure of that nature, that the technology, I mean, kudos to you for making this leap, because it is absolutely needed. I totally see it.
Right. I mean, that's a great analogy, what you're talking about. And not only do you have a shared expectation, but as you said, you have a back and forth.
It's a collaborative process, and you're establishing trust. They now, because at some point you're still going to be, as the provider or the purveyor, you're still going to have to take on the heavy lifting, right? You're still going to have to do that. But you now have a person, in this case, a patient that is genuinely much more at ease. And you have a roadmap of what their expectations are. Otherwise, I mean, most people I'll tell you, most people don't know what they don't want until you show it to them. And then they'll know they know they don't want it, right? Let alone what they want, right? So visualization is very difficult for a lot of people to see. And visualization, I think the point you were making is, even if you can visualize, there's two visuals. What I think is going to be, and what I, as a professional, think from experience I can achieve. But those two are not necessarily the same unless you have something to help you get there.
And then there's also comprehension. I mean, so I'll give you an example. This might be a little bit, it's a tiny bit graphic, but not too much so. A very common situation is a woman who comes in, she has small breasts, and they're set a little bit wide across her chest. And she comes in and she wants, larger breast, and she wants cleavage because she's never had it. So she's wanted this her whole adult life. It's a common occurrence, and there's a common problem. You can't move what Mother Nature has given you. If Mother Nature has her tissue on the outside of your chest wall, you can't take that tissue and move it. But what you can do is you can, based on where you put the implant pockets, you can create some cleavage by placing the implants closer together.
Right.
The problem is, if you do that, you're taking that tissue and you're forcing the tissue outwards, meaning that nipples and areolas are going to be pointed outwards. This is a hard thing to explain to a woman whom, for her whole adult life, has wanted cleavage.
Well, and maybe using a visual reference of somebody else that is not like basically the makeup of whom is not like hers. And so her expectations are not based on what's possible in her particular condition, but it's just what she has seen. And so to get her to let that go and actually understand that maybe there's more that's more fitting for her. Yeah, you're right. I totally get it.
Now, in this case, our system is built like a virtual mirror. You can look at yourself. For this example, as a doctor is describing the situation that I just described to you, instead of using my hands and pointing and stuff like this, she's looking at herself and she's seeing her breast move based on the conversation. Here's what would happen if we created more cleavage, and now she sees her breast doing like this. And she's like, I do not want that. And so you describe and you educate. And you can imagine verbally, it's hard to change someone's mindset that they've had for 10 or 15 years.
Oh, I totally do. Yeah.
Visually, how long does it take?
Seconds. And especially if they are engaged in that, in terms of giving you instant feedback. And I know it doesn't really speak to the skill of a surgeon with performing surgery, right, or augmentation, but the fact that you can respond to them in real time and show them how, based on the feedback they gave you, you modified and enhanced your proposed solution. That is I mean, at the end of the day, it's a trust built. There needs to be a trust, right? Any transaction, has to have a trust basis. And something
Exactly.
that's as personal as somebody basically cutting into you, or basically, performing surgery on you, there's apprehension, there's anxiety, there's all this other stuff that doesn't necessarily come when I'm trying to sell somebody a piece of furniture or put a paint on the wall, right? But the idea is similar. If I can show somebody, like you're saying, and if there's a mirror, and the mirror, by the way, the mirror interface, if you will, is pretty brilliant, because it still has that sort of image aspect to it as well.
And it's fun.
It's fun,
right?
yeah.
I mean, it's an, oh, wow. I mean, what does a
Right.
patient do when she sees herself and she sees her own breasts on her person and they start moving? They get excited, and they don't sit still like we do. As men, we're like this during conversations.
Right.
You put us in front of a mirror, we're pretty still. You
Right.
put a woman in front of a mirror and it's like, ooh, and
Yeah.
there's that wow effect. And it really makes the whole thing an experience, and it makes it, as you said, collaborative. It's really awesome to watch them respond. And you know what it does? It empowers women. Because
in real time. And this is the thing I keep going back to, right? In real time. And, I start up with the show, I said, like, we are experiencing a paradigm shift in how we behave. And I think it's affecting every aspect of our life. I mean, whether it's your kids and whether they're going to do distance learning or not this coming year, whether it's, how you were basically social distancing and still, assisting your parents who are elderly, but trying to keep safe. This is everything is changing. And, the old adage of the fact that you have to do something new in a different way for 30 days for it to become a habit, right? That's the old adage.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Well, I got newsflash for people. We're at almost 6 months, not 30 days. So if it takes 30 days for a new habit to take form, imagine what happens after 6 months. There is no going back to the way we were used to do things.
No, and there's a comfort level that's been built up. I mean, right now, probably 6 months ago, you would have had me come into the studio.
Sure.
For this, now I'm in my little training studio in front of my Zoom. And 6 months ago, this would have been, or 3 months ago, an uncomfortable way for me to do this.
And if you did it, I mean, if you're like me, when you did Zoom, it was like I clicked my phone. It was just another form of almost like telephone communication. I never really explored all aspects of it. I didn't really worry about whether I had the webinar feature or not, how many people I could bring on. Can I do a live feed on Facebook? I mean, all of that stuff, even though we've been using Zoom, let's say for the last 3 years or 2 years, all of those things were just like superfluous. I was like, oh, why do I need all of that stuff? If somebody's going to call me, I'm going to click my cell phone, and it's just a way that they want to communicate with me from overseas. Less cost. That's the only reason I use Zoom. And so now I'm finding different ways to use the technology. How quickly, were you surprised by how quickly we adapt to new technology?
Yes. From a developer's perspective, from a user's perspective, everyone's becoming more comfortable really fast, so fast that almost in every case of technology, I think you'll find that, the demand outpaces the supply. A few things in life like that, right?
It's true. I mean, from an R&D and business perspective, that's a great spot to be in, because the demand is there, just hungry, waiting for somebody to deliver.
Absolutely. And from a startup company, I mean, when technology companies like mine start up, we don't start up like traditional companies.
Right.
We are not organically growth driven. We don't take a product and try to get revenues to pay for the product and to develop more based on revenues. It's not revenue based. I mean, we are 5 years into this company. We don't have revenue. Mm-hmm. It's technology companies are investment based companies. So you're looking for a total addressable market. You're guys like me, I spend 80% of my time chasing money. Meeting with high net worth individuals. We're at the point now I'm beginning to meet with venture capitalists, private equity firms, investment bankers. That's how you drive these sort of new growth companies and technology. So it's great that you can recognize when there's a demand.
Right.
It's really hard when you've got to go build that supply side.
Well, and you were sharing this with me earlier, to the expectations of the person, in this case, the plastic surgeon, their demands are, and their caliber of professionalism and the way that they practice their craft is at such a heightened, sophisticated level that anything that they are going to adapt to, which is new technology or new tools for them to use, will have to meet and exceed those sort of performance minimums, right? Those expectations that they have.
And it has to fit into what they think the product is supposed to do, which isn't always what it's designed to do. And you and I can carry this on later. Basically,
Yeah. I was going to say we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, I want to hear about that. I want to hear about how it's been to do that, because you're at the point where you're either ready to go or you're already there, and now you've got something serious for people to like invest in. I want to know how that road has been, how that journey has been. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll pick it up where we left off.
Awesome. Thanks, Raad.
Thanks.
Life is a journey. Each day we grow, taking us forward. And when we consider making a change, we need a way to visualize that change with confidence before making a decision. Now you can. The first step is to use the Mentor Visualizer, powered by Illusio, to visualize different options for your body. The next step is to find a surgeon that uses the professional-grade version of the visualizer by Illusio to continue with more in-depth, customized visualization. Illusio uses a combination of 3D imaging technology and the artistic talent of a qualified surgeon to help you visualize your outcome in real time. Illusio's virtual mirror is a truly personalized and interactive way to see what you're going to look like, helping you best share your vision for your body with your surgeon. Welcome to Illusio. Ask your surgeon for your Illusio visualization today.
Welcome back, everybody. We're back from our break, and we are visiting with Ethan today about their technology that is revolutionizing breast augmentation and how patients and doctors actually now can communicate for the very first time. Just to kind of recap a little bit before we went on the break, we were talking about how the technology now is providing the ability for the patient to literally visualize on their own body using your mirror interface what the surgery results would look like, versus before in the past it was, doctors' personal work of before and afters, or some sort of, the expectations were like you were expecting to maybe get this is what I can basically work towards, and it was never really personalized to the point where it took away the not knowing. And given the fact that the procedure is the nature that it is, and it has emotionalities that are associated with it for whatever reason, maybe it's reconstructive to an accident or cancer or whatever it may be, it's an emotional process, and there was a certain amount of leap of faith that was needed because you couldn't really see what you were going to get. And with your technology and the augmented reality component to it, it really makes that unknown almost go away to the point where this is what and you had mentioned that also body types and particular physicalities have certain limitations, or they need a different approach. So, and you can recap on that if you don't mind, Ethan. I think that's a good spot for us to pick this up from is how people's expectation may be based on a visual they've seen in a magazine or something, but that their body type is not really able to do that. And so you need to get them to the point where they understand that. And this is a great tool to help them have the doctor do that.
That's right, Raad. I mean, we probably could have picked any other body part and had a much easier time getting to that finish line than breast. I mean, there is nothing that's more variable. Shapes, sizes, types, all kinds of different indications with the woman's breast. And then you compound that with the woman's overall structure.
Right.
Shoulder width, overall weight, height, hips, tummy. So the beautiful thing about a virtual mirror is a woman can step closer and just see her breast, or she can step further away and she can see the breast relative to her whole body.
Well, and for people that are listening to us have this conversation, is probably be the fact that it's two guys having a conversation about this, but right, but the thing that also fascinated me is when you told me, actually, I mean, this is how serious this is in terms of like the aid that or the possibilities that this allows to happen, is you were telling me, and I was astounded by the statistics, how many surgeries or how many procedures are actually not satisfactory and basically leads to additional, I mean, what was that percentage?
It's 20% end up in reoperation.
So one in five procedures ends up in reoperation. And that's, I'm assuming, is not because of the doctor's situation. And in a lot of cases, it may be like, non-satisfying results. I mean, is there data on that?
there is a lot of data, and they don't quantify how the 25 or 20% breaks down, but it's largely accepted, sort of suggested and accepted by the industry that that's largely due to just simply wrong shape, wrong size, the wrong size implant chosen. So typically what happens is, again, your instincts are correct. The doctors are not doing a poor job at what they do. They do a very good job. The problem is that they're doing a very good job of what they think is the best thing for that patient. The patient has separate expectations. So there's just no way without some type of visualization to have the same image.
Well, and let's just add the fact that, this isn't something that's instantaneous, and there's a healing period, there is a recovery period. So then to have that sense of, well, it's not exactly what I wanted, or, it's more than I wanted, it's not really what, not what I expected. And it's like you said, the doctor's not at fault. I mean, they tried to the best of their ability to communicate. And let's, if you will, let's take this out of the realm of plastic surgery and the realm of breast augmentation. Think about it, and anybody who's listening, this is for the purpose of people that are the audience, is that, think about it in terms of visualizing anything. Okay. And I'll go back to, again, my area of my wheelhouse, if you will. Okay. I can sit there and I can explain to somebody how their room addition is going to look like on the back of their house, or their backyard redo is going to look like on the back of their house, or, appropriately these days, what their office is going to look like when they use it for Zoom. I can explain that to them in words all day long. A lot of people, even the most imaginative, sometimes have a hard time visualizing. And that's really what we're talking about, is visualization, right? And then visualization also filters through a whole bunch of things like pre-existing biases. I could say red to you and you may think crimson. It's like there's so many variations to how we visualize in our mind's eye. And so the only way to really establish a benchmark, a line of expectations, I find, even in what I do, is to literally do a visualization, a rendering, if you will, a three-dimensional walkthrough, some sort of representative visual that is specific to that particular situation. I can't show you a backyard of a house that has basically, let's say, I don't know, 2,000 square feet of a backyard, right? And then tell you that your backyard that backs up on a wall and you barely have any grounds at all is going to look like this. It's just that you're not going to expect that. I can show you something that is appropriate, but it's still not your backyard. It's the same thing, like having a visual tool to not even just close a sale, but to able to communicate better is invaluable, and regardless what the field is. And when it comes to something like this, where, I'm not digging in the dirt in your backyard, and if I make a mistake, I'll dig a deeper hole. This is somebody basically that's going under for a procedure that is only going to get the full reality of what that procedure did to them, and whether the expectations were met after the recovery, after the swelling is down, all of that stuff. And if you're not satisfied at that point, you have one of two options. You got to live with it and never really be satisfied because, God, I just didn't get what I wanted. Oh, well. Or that 20% that goes back for, return surgery. The cost alone is a factor. The time and emotional impact is a factor. So let's talk about this technology and the road to get to where you have gotten. Like, I'm sure it wasn't like a quick fix to get this technology to merge.
It wasn't, and we started down one path and we ended up in another. And the reason is the doctors. The doctors expected this to be technology that was a true representation of their patient. We started with a piece of composite animation, not a 3D photograph of a patient. Half of them said that was good. The other half said not good enough.
And for people who don't understand what that is, what is that?
Yeah, let me describe it. So we're projecting an image of a woman's breast back on her as she looks in a virtual mirror, basically using a TV like a mirror so she can see herself.
Yeah.
We were projecting on her a default piece of animation. It was not a picture of her. It was just a picture of breast, and we can change the color and the shape to look like her and then to in real time change it even further to look like what the possibilities are.
Okay.
Over the past 12 years, again, driven by the market, we took it upon ourselves, and thankfully we reached this milestone, which was to find a really cool, really technically advanced 3D camera,
Okay.
where we can 3D capture a woman's actual breast. And then that's part of it. You know, you have a picture of a breast. It's in 3D. If it's on a computer screen, you can rotate it. But that's not to say that the computer knows how to add roundedness or cleavage or
Right.
sag to that image. So there are roughly 10,000 data sets in that image. We had to teach the computer how to place every one of those data sets, so then we can then tell the software how to move the left nipple or roundness or cleavage or sag or any of these things. So that was a very, formidable task to be able to do that. But now we've done it. And at this stage, what we do is we actually capture an image of an actual patient. It takes about 2 minutes to process data.
Mm-hmm.
And now we can actually manipulate her, a photograph of her own breast back on her.
So this is interesting because every surgeon, I would assume, has their own technique. They have their own, if I'm remembering this correctly, the conversation I've had about this is, with reconstructive surgery or with aesthetic surgery, you seek out a particular doctor because they have a certain skill, a certain speciality, right? So you're developing a tool to help these doctors. How sensitive is this technology to that specific uniqueness that professional basically brings to the table?
A fantastic question. And this is where we really differentiate from where doctors sort of think we need to be and where we want to be. A doctor thinks this is a tool to help them pick out an implant. And that's a discussion for a whole nother day. That's a difficult situation. How do you pick the right implant for a patient? Our tool is an artistic tool. We've created something that artistically a doctor has. Think of it, if you're designing a home or a backyard, you have 13 different things you can put in that backyard. And this gives you the ability to draw it.
Right.
That's what we do. We have 13 different characteristics of the way, a breast is moved, the shape and size of it. And the doctor can draw it or create it. Again, moving an image of the woman's real breast, but creating whatever is in their mind. So their procedures, their techniques, their tactics differ from one doc to another. Illusio just gives them the tool to visually represent it. And then let me switch gears really fast, because you keep mentioning reconstructive surgery, which is fascinating to us. It is a direction we're going. We're not quite there yet, but it's soon. Mm-hmm. There are just some technical things we have to make. But now let's put aside the idea of the doctor and the implant and the communication and just look at the visual tour.
Right.
That this would enable a woman to get on arguably one of the worst days of her life. She just got diagnosed with cancer.
Right.
And we're going to help show her in 5 minutes. She's watching herself in a virtual mirror.
Right.
And the doctor's taking her through the next 12 months journey.
Right.
Truncated into 5 minutes. Here you are today. Here you are post-mastectomy. Here you are through the reconstructive process.
Right.
Here you are at the end of the 12-month journey. Your breasts have been built back up. The scars have diminished. Mm-hmm. And the psychological impact of that 10-minute journey, if you will, which is a snapshot, to tone back the fears of everything that they're learning on that horrible day.
Right.
And I've spoken to women, and I've told them about the vision, and women who are through the process, after or even during, and and tears. I mean, it's really, really emotional, really impactful.
Ethan, I mean, I have members of my own family that have had to go through this process, and thank God, if there's a silver lining to that a lot of them have gone through it, is that when one of them goes through it, the ones that had gone through it before act in a very, very strong first degree of separation support system, right? I mean, there's a lot of emotions that go on. It is a very traumatic time And it add to the fact that sometimes the procedure, they decide to do this procedure as a preventive procedure because they come from a family that has a history of cancer. They're looking at possibility of like getting ahead of it, if you will, right? And I've seen situations, and I've heard of situations where people have basically opted for a double mastectomy. It's because if I'm going to do it, I'm going to just do it and make sure that I eliminate the risk as much as possible because I have a history in family. So it is a traumatic decision to make. And then after the fact, as much as you can prepare yourself, as we know in all things, when you're in it, when it's happened, it is a totally different reality. So for having something like this that could provide an emotional aid, if you will, to help them through that period by showing them what the possibilities realistically are going to be, right? Not just pie in the sky, oh, we'll take care of it later. Let's focus on your mental well-being right now. It could very well be a very useful tool just to deal with the emotional and psychological impact of the surgery.
Yeah.
I mean, even in advance of the surgery, to be honest with you, right? You're going in and you're having surgery and it's traumatic, and all kinds of demons are raised in it, and your family history is raised in it, and cancer and all of that stuff that goes with it. I mean, it is traumatic for women, I think, when they even get the call of saying, "Wait a minute, there's a shadow. I don't know. We need to arrange for a procedure, a biopsy, to try to find out what's going on." That alone is traumatic. So let alone now you have basically faced with the reality that you have to have the surgery. And here is the thing. But I'm fascinated by that because also, we're talking about breast augmentation right now. We're talking about reconstructive surgery. We're talking about cancer, and we're talking about women, right? But I think this technology that you're developing, especially through the interface of a mirror, right, is limitless to what you could do relevant to body image and reconstruction of whatever. I mean, and the breasts are very particular because it's almost like the hardest thing you could have picked, like you said, right? Right. But like, I think about, facial reconstruction, things of that nature, where you're not just showing somebody a picture of something else. You're actually dealing with them on a one-on-one. This is you that we are basically showing you what's going to happen to.
Yeah. It changes the discussion into an experience. It really does. And it makes it not only more real, the comprehension value is heightened tremendously from both parties.
So where are you in terms of this getting to market? In terms of, I mean, are you done with your developmental side? Is this being rolled out in an like trial basis somewhere? Where are you?
Thankfully we're at the end of the trial basis. So we spent about 2 years in trials and additional development. Okay. Now we're ready for really a global launch. So we're partners with the #1 implant company, breast implant company in the world called Mentor Worldwide. Mentor, they're close to here in San Clemente. They're right in Irvine. They're part of the Johnson & Johnson medical device family of businesses. Fantastic partners, couldn't be any better. And they're rolling us out efficiently or effectively in just a few weeks. Wow. So we tap into their sales base. They have about 80 to 100 salespeople who are already selling to plastic surgeons. Right. And we have a contract with them, and the belief is if their surgeons use this visualization, Illusio visualization, then they'll convert more patients, buy more implants. And we're doing the same thing overseas. We have about to sign a distribution agreement in the Middle East. That's going to give us access to 13 countries in the Middle East. And an additional contract is being signed with 3 countries in the EU.
That's amazing. And just how long has it been? I mean, you got 2 years of trials, right?
Yep.
And then what did you say, 12 years before that?
No, 2 to 3 years before that. So the inception of the idea was about 5 years ago. You go out, you raise money, you get your friends and family to, back you, and you build an early test phase, and then you start finding people to build this thing, because I am far from the smartest one in the group. I'm on the bottom end. I got to go find people who are much, much brighter than I am and somehow put this vision into an actual application. And then you build something, and then you realize you need more money, so you go back out, and now you become an expert at fundraising. And we've gone through the gamut. We even did a what's called a Regulation A crowd fund that's SEC regulated.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we put this out on the open market pretty much, almost like an IPO, but for startup companies.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I usually ask this question in the beginning, and I didn't get a chance to ask it. What was the motivation? What was your motivation to do this? Like, I know this is not your past background, right? What made you, was this just here's an example of, you know, recognizing a demand and the tools that were available were lacking?
It was a lot of things, a lot of things. It was, I wanted to seek a lot more work-life balance, which I hope a lot of people who are listening to this realize that that's really important. You know, life is short, and if you have to pivot in your life once in a while, make adjustments to that so that you can enjoy day to day, spend time with those you love. It's an important thing to do. So I did that, got introduced to the technology, applied to non-medical stuff, and realized there's got to be something really cool, sort of a pragmatic use of augmented reality. And then, you know, when my cousin had performed surgery on my wife, the light bulb just went off. And then you start looking into it and realizing this just makes all the sense in the world.
Well, and I appreciate you answering that question, Ethan. I had a feeling that, as always in cases like this, that there may be a personal reference point, a personal experience that triggers this, right? In your case, you know, you had a family member that was a practitioner, and then you had basically your wife, basically, right? And so, and thank you for what you said, because not only is that balance, we always talk about that balance, right? But I think a lot of people perceive that it's an ideal that is not achievable.
Right.
Right. And I think any of us that have been just, you know, head down and just rolling, you know, in our back of our heads, oh, I'd love to have a balance, man. It would be so nice to have a balance. Right. And then it's like, we just move on and you don't drive. Yeah. But it is, if anything, I think this period where we were forced to slow down, like you've been doing this sort of, you've made a decision, you moved in this direction for five years, right? Some people have been kind of on the wheel, right? 9 to 5, you know, 2 hours of driving, quality of life is shot. Saturday, you know, you're pretty much prepping for the week, or Sunday you're prepping for the week. Saturday you're taking the kids, like the balance. Yeah. You're like, I'm just going around for this ride. I don't know how to get that balance, right? And I think the important thing to say, and by example, thank you for sharing, is that it is achievable. It is achievable. Yeah. You just have to commit to the fact that it's important enough for you to do that, to pivot. Pivot is a perfect word. I mean, I have been using the word pivot with this COVID pandemic so much, because if one word really just fully encompasses this period of the last 6 months for me, is that whether by choice or because you felt like you did not have a choice, you needed to pivot. And good things come out of pivoting, right? Like, here's a perfect example. You pivoted. In the course of pivoting, you realize, and in your personal experience, you realize that there was a need that wasn't being fulfilled, right? That you became sort of a pursuit, a passion, a mission, if you will, a cause to basically, you know, champion and try to find a solution for.
Right. And then on the work-life balance, I mean, look, I spent 20 years in the corporate grind, but I was doing well. You know, I had a regular paycheck coming in, which afforded me the ability to step away from that and start all over again. But startup world is not easy, and you're not taking home a lot of money. I mean,
in that paycheck that you're used to, you know, at some point in the startup world, when you basically have left that, you know, the safety of that edge of the pool, right? At some point you realize you're sitting there questioning yourself, like, why did I do that? Was that a smart move or not?
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Part of the journey.
But then you realize, you know, the good thing about the startup world is I dictate what I need to do on a given day.
Yeah.
Some days that day is 1 hour long. Some days it's 10 hours long. And that's very different from the 9-to-5 job, because if I'm not being productive, then I'm not working. I'm doing whatever I want to do.
Well, I always tell people, because I did that corporate path for almost about 8 years, right? And I tell people, you work harder for yourself than you ever worked for anybody else. And it's not that you don't have issues and problems. but they're your own issues and problems. They're not somebody else's that you've adapted, right?
That's totally right. Yes.
Right. And so it is and in a way you're actually even, I mean, you know, a lot of us that were doing 9 to 5 was never 9 to 5, right? But when you work for yourself, it's even more less than 9 to 5. I mean, and if you're in a situation like this where you're developing something new that you're kind of basically inventing or bringing together, you know, a culmination of technologies, or if you're trying to develop or create something, whether it be design or otherwise, from scratch, it literally is something that can hit you at 2 o'clock in the morning, and next thing you know, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and you've been up for the last 4 hours, right? I mean,
See, Raad, totally. Now we're bringing it 365, right back to the beginning, which is pivoting and COVID-19 and working on Zoom. It all comes down to productivity, a 24/7 clock, no longer a 9 to 5, and the world is adjusting to what, you know, some of us have found it, others are going to be forced into it, just as you said. But it's interesting.
The thing that really kind of like amazed me is just how quick we adapted. I mean, there are people that basically fight technology tooth and nail, right? And I understand that. I understand that. Technology is a tool. It should never be where you are a slave to it, for sure. I completely believe that, right? And it's very easy to do that. You get caught into the technology, and now it's what, you know, what's the next piece and what's the next piece? And I've done that, man. I have built those computers. I have upgraded and regutted them and rebuilt them, and, you know, all of that stuff back in the day. And I needed to have the faster modem, and had to have the faster, video cards and the faster processors and all of that stuff, right? What's interesting is at some point you get to the point where it's like, it is a tool. It is a tool that I have to be proficient about, right? It's like this right now. It's like you have to adapt to technology. It's not an option, right? You have to basically reimagine what your life looks like, because it's not an option, right?
That's
and
right.
So the quicker you embrace that, the more that you are basically likely to find something that is joyful in it. And you know, we're talking about your technology as something that is almost coming into its own at the right time, because now we're with all these telemedicine that's going on, right? I mean,
Yes.
I don't even have to be in that surgeon's office to use your technology.
That's right.
Right? I mean,
that's the future. That's not right today, but you're right. Absolutely.
I mean, what are those? There's one in Fashion Island, I think. There's like a future medicine thing. When you walk in, it doesn't even look like a doctor's office. It looks like, you know, like a concierge desk almost, right?
Yes.
And it's like body scanning and all this stuff. And the technology, the interesting thing about this is that technology's been there for a while. Like, you know, like mapping somebody, whether it was something being used in the movie industry, or what, for virtual reality, or all kinds of special effects, right? The technology is there. It's just funny how the technology is starting to now manifest itself in daily life. That's
exact pragmatic solutions for new technology, right? That's you can do a whole nother show on that. The first shows are always going to be like, you know, if it comes to augmented reality or virtual reality, you have gaming and pornography. Those are going to be the first two things.
Right.
And then maybe gimmicky stuff like advertising.
Well, but I mean, even with augmented reality for advertising, right? We're talking about, I was talking to some people, and they're like, well, I don't know how that's going to work. I said, well, it's actually very interesting for me as a designer, because now your seasonal advertising on your storefront does not actually have to be something that colors your windows, right? Mm-hmm. It could be an app interface on your phone.
Yeah.
And basically just think about the savings in terms of printing costs, in terms of build-up cost. All you have to do is basically visualize how you're going to introduce it or present it to the end user. But you don't you can compete it kind of levels the playing field, just like with like internet level the playing field for online marketing and e-commerce. Augmented reality is going to kind of like level the playing field, I think, for a lot of people that are nowhere able to produce digital content at a price point because of the size of their business. And so they were basically always left behind. And now all of a sudden it's the price of entry is a lot less. The impact is a lot more. The platform allows for sophisticated, product delivery. And here it comes. I mean, we're talking about augmented reality still in 2020, like it's something that's, sci-fi. by 2025, we may be looking at it the same way as we would order a brochure, a trifold. I mean, it's just.
I totally agree. I mean, and you were right. This stuff has been around for a while. Why hasn't it all caught on? I don't know. Maybe not enough developers are saying, find that pragmatic use for it. In 5 years from now, I hope it's much more day-to-day for all of us, because there are so many applications and implications.
Well, your solutions are, they're also, I think, going to be appealing because it's a high price product, or service, I should say, right? I mean, there's money that is of a certain amount that is involved. And I think a surgeon, for example, will look at this as possibly a unique value proposition that if they adapt it, it elevates them in their ability to deliver service to their client, right? To the patient. I think it will be embraced because it gives people an advantage in the course of giving them an advantage, not only for their business, but also for how they communicate. And, I got some doctors in my family. I got to tell you, we pick on engineers for being, kind of like limited in their social skills and communicating. I think doctors have the same issue like that, right?
Yes.
And I can say that because I've got both. I got engineers and doctors on both sides, right? I will share with you this as we're wrapping up, and it'll show you kind of an interesting scenario where how things sometimes manifest. Like you saw something, you were not in the field, you pursued it, and here we are sitting here talking about it as a success. And I'm wishing you all the success with this because I think it is going to be pretty successful. I'll share with you a story of a gentleman that I met when I basically was redesigning the Juice It Up stores. The last economic downturn, they were all struggling. They lost half of their inventory, and we needed to really reimagine their company and reimagine the stores, cut down on cost of production, of build out, and all that good stuff. Because at the end of the day, they're selling a franchise, right? Mm-hmm. So I got to know the gentleman who owned the company at the time, Mr. Frank Easterbrook, quite well, and I'm like, Frank, how did you get into the smoothie business, right? And because he didn't strike me as somebody who was like, from that side of things. What are you in food and beverage? No, he was an engineer. You were an engineer. Okay. He was an engineer for Mars. Okay. They built facilities for basically the confectionery and the chocolates and all this stuff. And he was with them for years, right? I said, okay. Well, do they pay really well? Because, I mean, you own a company now. You got 200 location, franchise location stuff. He goes, well, they paid well. But what made him the money that basically then he went and bought this company from, that was started actually by a couple of guys from Cal State Fullerton, right? Just it up, is he recognized, because he has doctors in his family, and every time they would get together and sit around the dinner table and they would be talking, they would talk about the frustration they had with sutures, right? Because they're in there, they're performing surgery and they needed sutures, and there's the clamp and the staple and all this stuff, and at the time, they all came in the same color. So the guy basically put his engineering cap on, because he was the only non-doctor sitting around the table. And he basically designed a color-coded system for staples and staple applicators. He then basically had machines that were producing that stuff in rooms that they were totally automated and barely had any lighting even on the ceiling. Like he had these warehouses just churning out the stuff. And then he turned out and sold the company to a major pharmaceutical company.
That's fantastic. What a great story.
And then took that money and basically put it in, Juice It Up.
Wow.
It really, to your point, he basically was in a similar situation. He was in a corporate environment. There was no sort of balance. He has his kids. He was having his grandkids. He wanted to find a way to basically maintain his standard of living, maybe even improve it, pass something on to his kids, but he looked at something. So as an engineer for a large multinational corporation, to just let go of the edge, sort of the safety of the edge of the pool, take a completely different direction based on something that he recognized was a demand that was not fulfilled.
Right.
And then turn that into a company that basically was selling, consumer goods and like basically a treat. And then he sold that company a couple of years ago. And he's sailing his sailboat and basically spending time with his grandkids.
That's awesome.
So the journey takes many turns, right? And you sometimes just kind of have to get out of your own way and see where the road takes you.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate
it's a fun journey.
You know what? It's exciting. You don't know what's around the next corner, but you know
Right.
that you have the skills to navigate it. So I appreciate taking the time, Ethan, today. I really do. I am very excited about what you're doing, and I really am excited about the fact that it's in San Clemente, that you're based. It just gives me a lot of more pride, one town, one team kind of thing.
Awesome.
So stay in touch. Let me know what's going on.
We will,
And
Rod, for sure.
and you know, maybe next time, actually, if you're open to it and if they're open to it, I would love to have you come on maybe with some of these doctors that you guys used in your trial period, and
Yeah.
maybe have them give their feedback, because I think the technology application applies across medical fields, across other things. So that engagement of a new technology, how it is basically introduced, how it's tested out, how it's basically then embraced by the industry or the profession. I think that's an interesting story to share. Regardless, I mean, we're talking about breasts here, but you know, regardless what it is, I think that journey, that collaboration between you and them during a trial period, I don't usually hear about that story. I hear about the end results and I hear about what, you know, the technology development, but that partnership between the two that make it possible to go through that trial period, I don't
Yeah.
usually hear that. I'd love to hear that, actually. So
Happy to.
consider that an invitation to you. You just let me know when.
That's fantastic.
All
Rod,
right.
thank you very much, man.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. Thanks everybody for joining us. I hope you find this very informative as I did. And hey, we got talked about breasts for about an hour, so you know.
It could
And
be worse.
and ladies, no disrespect. I really hope that you listen to this, because I think for members of my family, I wish this was around when they were going through it, because just the emotional journey that is involved in something like this, anything that helps anybody deal with that stress and anxiety that comes with it in any way that is lessened, I am all for. So thank you, Ethan, for doing that in what you are doing, because it is definitely not lost on me as being something that comes out of this.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you.